As the Trump administration intensifies its immigration crackdown, new data shows ICE detention facilities have hit maximum capacity. More than 51,000 people are currently being held in detention, which is 30% higher than at the start of Trump's term. And it's roughly 10,000 more detainees than ICE is currently funded to hold. Nearly 29,000 people were booked into ICE facilities in the month of May alone. That's the highest number since Trump returned to the White House. We know the pressure is on to increase those numbers. Of those in detention, only 56% have criminal backgrounds. The rest have no criminal history. ICE has also increased the number of facilities in use. One of them, the main processing center in Los Angeles, is currently holding 140 detainees. At the start of Trump's term, it held just 3. And the number of people in detention is expected to continue to grow. As the Department of Homeland Security says, ICE arrested more than 2,000 people per day for several days last week. Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Norma Torres of California. She represents a district in eastern Los Angeles County. Congresswoman, first of all, what are you hearing from your constituents, members of your community right now?
Ali, thank you for the invitation. My constituents are very, very scared. Most of my constituents are either working locally in a primarily Latino community or driving downtown to Los Angeles for their job. So they're very scared. They don't want to get caught up in a situation where ICE is profiling them and detaining them simply because the color of their skin. And that is what we're seeing. That's why we are so concerned. And that is the reason why 4 of us went downtown to get some accountability, to do oversight, and have transparency over the actions, really violent actions of ICE.
And what you're talking about there is that you and your colleagues tried to show up to an ICE detention facility in your area and you were turned away. I mean, you've been in Congress for a long time. Is that how this typically works? DHS is saying, if you give us a heads up, you can come.
No, it is not supposed to work this way. As a matter of fact, in the last Trump administration, we made sure that we changed the law to ensure that members of Congress would not be blocked from entering and doing oversight. Look, people have a right to have their human rights respected. They have a right to have water, food, and just basic needs met, access to their medication. None of this is happening when the raids, the scale of the raids, and not just that, but the lack of information. People's names are not being entered into a database, so there's no way to find them. Imagine if your loved one just didn't come home one day and you're trying to locate them, but ICE is playing the shell game, transferring them from one location to another, because they're not interested in due process. They don't have a warrant. What they're interested in is fast-tracking people out of here.
And they are, right? I mean, we've talked extensively on this show, on others, about the pressure that people like Stephen Miller are putting on ICE to ramp up their deportation numbers. The administration says this is a fight that they are happy to have because they feel they have a mandate on immigration. Do you feel politically like they're right?
No, Trump promised to remove criminals, rapists, drug dealers. That's what he promised. That's why people voted for him. What he is doing is they are forcing their way into elementary schools. They're conducting raids in front of school graduations, arresting children, arresting people at their work sites. So California just ranked number 4th largest global economy. We are the breadbasket of the country. We feed Americans across America. And part of the reason why we are so successful is our immigrant story. They are the ones that are holding up and feeding America while barely feeding their families.
And yet I think those of us certainly in the political press corps who watch this, but also just people who watch politics, were, I think, surprised potentially by what we saw in the last election, where Trump did better with Hispanic men, for example, on an agenda that entailed cracking down on immigration. I mean, how do you square that circle, especially when you layer over it what you're now seeing in your own community?
Hispanic men, and look, I am a mother of 3 sons and a grandmother of 2 young boys. I'm a boy maker.
Yeah.
So they want to hear about jobs. And I think that this is where Democrats failed. We failed to talk about the number of jobs that we were creating, the opportunities to scale up professions, the opportunities to go to college, the equal opportunity to have a chance to achieve the American dream. That was missing in our campaign. I don't blame them, but I think now we are living with a consequence that people didn't vote for, and they have to use their voice in order to be heard once again. Look, we cannot allow our neighbors to be targeted simply because of the way they look. We have to stand up for each other, because if we don't, when you are on the line, who will be there to help you?
I want to circle back to the core of this, right? Which is, we're talking about immigration, we're talking about the politics of it and the way that the administration is going about this. But when you see that National Guard troops have been mobilized against your governor's wishes, that it's now something that's being tied up in court, and now there's going to be a second suit, apparently, around the potential deployment of active duty Marines. What does that tell you about where your community is, where this country is right now?
What that tells me is the White House does not understand the complexity of California, the diversity of California. No one knows the city of Los Angeles better than the LAPD, than the local leaders, and then the state leaders. No one knows the state of California better than the people that are there on the ground every single day serving our communities. So for the president to push armed troops with weapons of war into our community, that is an assault on our state's rights. That is an assault on our constitutional rights. And that is an assault on every American citizen that is being hurt right now simply because they want to be outside and be able to protest peacefully. Yes, I understand there are people that are creating some chaos and being violent, but this is the violence that they have encountered, that they have seen ICE utilize on them while armed to the teeth, covering their face, shielding their identities, and not even having license plates on their vehicles so they cannot be traced. Yeah. So who really is out there arresting people? Yeah. Are these federal agents, or is this the army of Donald Trump?
Yeah, and I think we've heard about the chilling effect throughout these communities because of the actions of ICE and the enforcement of immigration crackdowns. Democratic Congresswoman Norma Torres of California, thank you, but stay here because